which would represent the Arias, would not have tfisus kedushin. That's what the Gemara said. The Gemara said that applies. We apply that to a chois isha, so that we know the main halacha that kedushin isn't toivus on a chayv krisos. We know about chois isha, and using a hekesh where the Torah says kol asher yaseh mikol ha'tayeva isha elav nichrasu, that creates a hekesh between all Arias. So since I know a chois isha, there's an isser to marry her, and kedushin is not toifus, I apply that to all the other Arias. That's what we finished off with yesterday. We actually went a little bit further. Ihachi, going on to Samach Chesed and Aleph, if you're going to tell me that every one of the Arias, anything that's chayiv kores, there's no tfisus kedushin, well then afilu nidonami, then you shouldn't be able to make a kedushin on a nida. We know you could make a kedushin on a nida, and if you're married to a nida, you don't become ois married to her when she becomes a nida. Allah Amar Abaye Hakol Moedim Beval Anida Yala Soita. A Soita is a woman who's mizana, so she's usher to her husband. But we don't say that her marriage dissolves. She'ein avlad mamzer. The blood is not a mamzer. So this opens up a discussion. Is nida one of the Arias? Yes, there's a chi of chorus, but is it one of the Arias? Is it called Arias? Nida? So the Gemara here is putting nida in that same category. Zok to Gemara, Amar Chizkiya, nida is an exception to the hekesh, which compares all of the Arias to Achais Isha. Because by nida the pasuk says Usehini das alav. So we darshan Usehini das alav, she can have havaya, she can have kedushin even though she's a nida. Afilu b'shas nidasa tehei bo havaya. Fact Gemara, now we have a problem, because we have two agents in the class of people called chayvei krisos. We have a nida who kedushin is toivus, and we have a chois isha who kedushin is not toivus. Michti ikal akusha nida. You can compare all of the Arias to nida, which would say that kedushin is toivus. Vikal akusha lachois isha, which would say kedushin is not toivus by any of the Arias. My chazus the makshus lula chois isha akshal nida. Who said you should compare all their eyes to chois isha and say that kedushin is not toifus? Let's compare all their eyes to nida and say that kedushin is toifus. And for the Gemara, kula of the chumra l'chumra makshi. If you have a choice of making a hekesh l'chumra or l'kula, you go l'kula. So now we need to ask a question. A couple of questions. First of all, is it like a safich deraisa l'chumra? Is that what it is? Or is that a fast rule? Is that a rule when it comes to Hekeshim that I'll pick up all? We know the rule is by Hekesh you go to Chumrah. What is that rule? The other question is, who said that saying that Kedushin is not Toifus is a Chumrah? Maybe it's a Kula, because now if she marries somebody else, Kedushin will be Toifus. And that's what Toifus asks. Zog Toifus, L'chumrah Makshina, didn't Toifus for Toifus, Adarabba, Chumrah, Loimar, the Tafsi Ba Kedushin. Maybe it's a Chumrah to say that Kedushin is Toifus. Because now she will be ushered to everybody else. Because Tosfos says there's a connection between Avlad Mamzer. Thank you so much. There's a connection between Avlad Mamzer and Tfisus Kedushin. But there are other Rishonim who say that no, it's not a suffix to your master. Rather, there's a rule. There's a rule that's how Hekeshim work. You go l'chumrah. Zog to Gemara Vayta. Rav Acha bar Yaakov Omar, Asher b'kavachomer miyavam. You know how I know all other Arias? Not with the Hekesh. Rather, we have a kavachomer from Yavam. Uma Yavama, she belav. The issur for Yavama to marry lechutz, to marry some other man, is merely a lav. So it's merely a lav. Yet halacha is letafsi b'kedushin. There's a special halacha that kedushin is not toifis on the yavama. There's a special limud, even though it's only a lav, kedushin is not toifis because it says loisia eishish hameis achutza. Whenever you use a lashon of loisia, it means there's no havaya. Kedushin wouldn't be toifis. So loisia eishish hameis achutza loiseheba havayos. So it's only a chiv lav, yet there's no tefis kedushin. So chayve misais, the chayve krisais, all of the arayis that carry either a misa or a misa b'dei shemayim penalty, loy kolshkin, surely they should not have tefis kedushin. Frek the Gemara, if you're going to make such an argument, well, maybe extend it to all chayve lav. Iachi shar chayve lavanami. You don't have a kal v'chomer from Yavama, but you have a memetzin. You find Yavama is an Isser La, Kiddushin is not Toifis. So to all Chayve Lavin, Kiddushin isn't Toifis. Amar Papa, no. Chayve Lavin behedik sivbahu, ki sihiyana le'ish, shtei noshim, achachas ahuva v'chasnu. There is a proposal that says that there is Havaya, Kiddushin is Toifis by Chayve Lavin, because it says ki sihiyana le'ish, shtei noshim, achachas ahuva v'chasnu. Now we just have to figure out how do you see from hachas ahuva v'achas nua that we're talking about chayve lav? But assuming that we can prove that, you have a raya that kedushin is toifus. Frek the Gemara, v'chiyesh snua l'fnei hamakom v'ahuva l'fnei hamakom. Is it possible that Hashem hates one of your wives and Hashem loves one of your wives? And the Vilna Gaon asks, how you talking? A man should hate his wife? It's an isser. It's an isser to hate somebody. So how could we say that there's a snua? Ella, you know what it must mean? Just to provide some context, this pasuk says if someone has a wife, v'achas ahuva, v'achas snua, v'yoldu lebanim, v'ahuva v'asnua, v'yabein abachar lasanua. Right? So the pasuk says you might not like the snua, so therefore you won't want to make him into a bachar. It says lo yivakir, you shouldn't make the ben ahuva al pnei ben asnua bachar. Why? Because he's the bachar. Kiyu bachar yakir losses like pishnayim. Even though the bachar was born to the snua, you have to recognize that as the bachar who's going to get double of your portion. The Gra asks another kash. Well, because she's a snua, it's not a bachar, it's your child, it's a bachar. Why is it his fault that you don't like her? Right? That's another kash of the Gra asks. Third kash of the Gra asks is the pasuk is a little out of order. It says kisenu lishtei noshim, ha'achasuva v'achasnua, right? V'yoldu leibanim, ha'ahuva v'asnua. So it's much that ahuva had children first. V'yoldu leibanim ha'ahuva v'asnua, v'yabena b'char v'asnua. Shouldn't have it said v'yoldu leibanim ha'asnua v'ahuva? Right? So those are the three questions of grass. We'll get to his territory in a minute. But let's see what the Gemara says. This is a woman who HaKadosh Baruch Hu is happy with this marriage because it's a legal marriage. Snua is Snua b'nisu'eha. The Rebbeinu Shalom is not happy with her marriage. Her marriage was be'isr. Rashi says, why would Hashem not like her marriage? Because it's prohibited with a lav. Even referring to a marriage that the Torah doesn't like, it still says kisiyena alma isbuhu avai. Well, the Kaman Parach, the Gemara is going to ask, maybe it's not a chayve lavin that the Torah is talking about. Maybe it's only chayve asay. Maybe only chayve asay it says kisiyena, because that would also be a snua. Hashem is not happy if you violate a chayve asay and marry a woman. Okay, so that's how we know it. So let's get to the Gra terms. The Gra has a very innovative shot. You know what the Gra says? The Gra says it's speaking where you married a woman, you didn't like her, you married her for a very short period of time, and you divorced her right away. And then you remarried another woman, and you had a baby in 7 months, and the baby was born the same day as a baby born to the wife that you already divorced. Which could, so now she became pregnant while you were married to a very short time, and both of the babies were born at the same time. And the question is, 1 second. Let me see how that for emphasis. So how does I'm going to figure what the Gra said, and I'll see if I can make sense of exactly when these babies were born. So it says V'yolda by one ha'huva v'asnua. So snua means he didn't want her, so he divorced her. That's what snua means. V'yolda by one ha'huva v'asnua. Then it says you shouldn't make the ahuva into a bechor al pi ben asnua ki asnua hi bechor yakala. He wasn't before. So I don't have clear what the Gross said, but he explains the pasuk in such a case where he was married to a first wife, he divorced her, she must have gotten pregnant, and then he married a second wife, and I don't remember which child was born first. So I don't remember the punchline. Something like that. Okay, Farfalm. I was tired when I was listening to Rabbi Rosen last night. Zakt Gemara. Ula Rabbi Kiva. What about Rabbi Kiva? The Amar ain't Kiddushin Toysim B'chai V'la. Rabbi Kiva Taka holds Kiddushin not Toysim B'chai V'la. So the problem is we have a pasuk of Kisiyena which says that Chai V'lavin, a Senua B'nisuel, has Kiddushin. Rabbi Kiva can't learn like that. So therefore Kisiyena B'maimukin. Where is there a Sihiyena? Where is there a Snua, someone who Hashem doesn't want you to marry, where Rabbi Kiva agrees that Kiddushin is Toyfus? So you know where? By an almana l'chayin god, like we learned yesterday. Rab Simoi. Remember, Rab Simoi said that Rabbi Akiva carves out from all the Chayvei Lavin. He carves out an almana l'chayin gadol because of the pasuk. The pasuk tells us that it becomes a halalah and not that there's no kedusha types. The Tanya Rab Simoi Omer min hakoil hay Rabbi Akiva oisem mamzer. What's the almana l'chayin gadol? Sharei Omer Torah lo yichal. At first it says. And then it's to tell us that the impact of a kohen gadol marrying almana is chilulim oisim. Merely makes chilulim they ain't oisim mamzeres, but it doesn't make mamzeres. So therefore, according to Rebbe Kiva, you'll say that what is the snua that the Torah is talking about? It's talking about an almana who married a kohen gadol. So it's no longer v'chisiena lich; it's v'chisiena lakoyin, right? Ulu Rabbi Sheva. What about Rabbi Sheva? The Amar Boyu v'nitzavech al Akiva ben Yosef shaya Omer kol she'ein lo bia b'Yisrael avlat mamzer. Remember, we had two ways of understanding it. Either he was only saying that even an almana l'kohen gadol is aser, but not a chayav yaseh, or maybe even a chayav yaseh is aser. So Nichol Rabbi Yesheva, even lafukid Rabbi Simoi kasi shapir. If Rabbi Yesheva was just saying that there's no kedushin toifsin by almana l'kohen gadol, I can live with that. Because even Rabbi Kiva would be minded that by a chayav yaseh, kedushin would be toifus. At least haven't enough sheikh Amar. If Rabbi Sheva was saying a blanket rule that never is a prohibited marriage, chal, and the child's a mamzer, well, that would even include a chayav yaseh. I feel a chayav yaseh. So maybe my mukamla. What case could there be a marriage at a kadosh bo, and therefore it's called sunu b'nisuel that Rabbi Kiva holds will be chal? So up to Gemara. So let me stop a second. What was the example that we've given until now? But a chayv yaseh. The example that we give is the isser to marry the first Jew generations of a mitzri, because it says dor shlishi yova ilahem bakal, and we're medayik from there. Michlal heinat hashemei alav v'aysechois dor rishon dor sheni you can, but it's only a chayv yaseh because there's no lois yaseh. It says dor shlishi yova ilahem bakal. So that's the case of the chayv yaseh that we're discussing. Whether or not Rabbi Kiva holds it's chal or not, but according to one pshat in Rabbi Sheva, it's not chal there. So where could there be a prohibited marriage that Rabbi Kiva holds a kedushin chal? Now that's also an isser asay, because it says v'hu isha b'vsuleha yikach. That's how we know she can't be a beula, but there's no lav there. Freit Gemara umashna. Why is it different than any other chayv asay? We already said that Rabbi Kiva says that any chayv yaseh is not going to be chal the kedushin. So why should this be any different? So the Gemara, the havel yaseh she'ein shava b'kol. Not only is it only a chayv yaseh, it doesn't apply to everybody. It only applies to the kohen gadol. So that's a very weak yaseh, and there even Rabbi Kiva would agree that kedushin is chal. V'rabbanan. What about the rabbanan? You said the rabbanan that how do we know that chayv lavin, the kedushin is chal, because that's what the snu is. The snu is a chayv lavin. Mehechatesa. At the mukhi love chayv lavin, nukma b'chayv yaseh. Maybe when it says maybe you only can learn from there that a chayv yaseh the kedushin is. Who said you could push the envelope and say that it even means chayv lavin kedushin is? Maybe Chayve Lavan, we should learn out of Anoman, we should learn out of Yavama. Yavama L'Shuk, we say, is Chayve Lavan, the Kiddushin is not Teufels. You have the pasuk of Kisien Elish, maybe that only applies to Chayve Asay. So to Gemara, Hani Chayve Asay, B'mayniyu. Let's think, what could it possibly be referring to? What is the case of Chayve Asay that we all talk about? Mitzri, right? And the problem is, Ishtei and Mitzriyos, then stay in Snuyos. If both these wives, the Ahuva and the Snua, are Mitzriyos, well, then it's not Achas Ahuva Achas Snua. They're both Snuyos, because they're both Manamutter. And if you want to say Achas Mitzriyos, Achas Yisraelis, and the Ahuva is the Israelis, and the Snua is the Mitri, Shtei Noshim is Me'am Echad Ve'inon. It says Kishen Elish Shtei Noshim is Mashma, that they both come from the same nationality. So that excludes, that means the pasuk cannot be speaking about somebody who married one wife who was a mitri. It can't be speaking about a man who married two women that were mitri, because then they're both snuas. So what else might it be? Maybe like Rabbi Kiva means a bula chayin gadol. The Rabban don't like that either. Miksiv kisien l'kayin. It says kisien l'ish. So they reject that. So therefore, the Rabban hold the most logical isser to apply the logical explanation of snua is Chayve Lavan. Rabbi Kiva, what about Rabbi Kiva? Rabbi Kiva doesn't have a choice. He has to ignore the diyukim of the pasuk Minei Ubei that the Rabbanan made, because he doesn't have the luxury to say speaking about Chayve Lavan. Because according to Rabbi Kiva, Chayve Lavan is not Tovis. Davidochik, because it doesn't fit into his halacha. He has to make his own shot and stel it on by a Bula Chayin Gadol, which is Einish Shabbat B'Koil, and even though it says Kisien El Ish and doesn't say Kisien El Koyin, he's forced to learn his pshat, because otherwise the pasuk won't be able to have a pshat according to him. Okay, so now we've come down to the bottom of things. Halach l'maisa, how do we know that Chayve Krisos, Kiddushin not Tovis, V'lat Mamzer, or Kiddushin not Tovis? We either know it from the Hekish, Kol Arayis Kular or Hukshu to Achois Isha, and not to Nida. By Nida, it's just we say Nida Salah. We don't learn it from Nida, we learn it from Achois Isha, because you go L'chom, if you have a choice of the Makish L'chula L'chomra, you go L'chom. That was shot number one. Shot number two was you have a Kal V'chomer from Yavama L'shuk. Malach Yavama L'shuk, which is only in Israel of Kiddushin Satovis, Kol Shkin Chayve Krisos. We don't apply to Chayve Lavan because we have the pasuk of Kisien Elish Teinoshim Achasuva V'Chasnua, which tells us that there is Havai, there is Kiddushin by Chayve Lavan. According to Rabbi Kiva, that pasuk is speaking about Be'ula L'Kohen Gadol. Beautiful. Now we're going to get up to the last category of the Mishnah, that a goy who has no Kiddushin, you go busser the father. If two goy marry, you go busser the father. So v'chol mi she'ein lo Allah.
He says it's from the Matzim.
I'm sorry?
He says a non-Matzim.
You're in the wrong stage of the Gemara. You're at the stage of the Gemara where we wanted to apply to Chayve Lavan. But with Chayve Lavan will be a Memitzina. But
by the end,
that's Rabbi Kiva, right? But we're going to not according to Rabbi Kiva, where Chayve Lavan, in fact, Kiddushin is Teufels. According to Rabbi Kiva, of course, Chayve Lavan is also Kiddushin is not Teufels. Even Chayve Asay, Kiddushin is not Teufels.
Not a California.
It can't be a Kal V'chomer because they're both Chayve Lavan, right? About it. Okay, Zok Gemara. V'chol mi she'ein lo lov. If nobody has Kiddushin, and one of the examples the Mishnah gave was a shivcha. A shivcha, there's no tvisas Kiddushin. Shivcha knaynis minalim. How do we know there's no tvisas Kiddushin for a shivcha? Amar Afuna Amar Kra. By the Akedah, we're getting close to that parsha. Shavu lochem poi im hachamar. Normally, we don't refer to a human being as a chamar, but lagabe hilchos Kiddushin, the guy is a chamar. I remember I once had an employee. He was probably the best employee I ever had. His name was Hans, and he spoke German. And I remember the first day.
Hey.
Oh, you remember? The
Best employee you ever had. I'm a little offended.
And I mean field employee. And I remember I once took him to Leon Yakubovich's place of work. We did a job for him, and he really worked hard. So Leon tells me in Yiddish, "Oy dan goy arbeit wie afert." So my guy says, "Ich weiß." He didn't help that he understood Yiddish.
Ich will.
Okay. Amar Kra, Shavu lechem poyim chamor. Hadoim lechamor. Goy is like a chamor. In other words, just like a chamor, you can't be mekadesh. So too a goy is not subject to kedusha. Ashkelon the letapsa kedusha. I'm sorry. No, it's a zimus susam zirmosam. Is that what you're referring to? So from here we learn that kedusha is not typhus. But v'loda kamoisha minola. How do we know that her vlad is like her? Meaning, if she marries a Yisrael and they have a child, how do we know that the child is a goy? If a yid marries a goy, if a yid marries a goya, how do you know that the child is not Jewish? The Amakra, the pasuk says, if somebody has a shivcha knainis and he has an Eved Ivri who he makes breed with the shivcha knainis, and then this Eved Ivri goes free, these are his children. It doesn't go free with the father. So the child has the din of a shivcha or of an Eved and doesn't go free. So you have a right from here that if a yid has relations with a goy, the child is a goy. Zogt Gemara, nachrish minolam. So you've proven it by a shivcha. How about a regular goyte? If someone has relations with a regular goyte and a child is born, how do you know that the child is a goy? This is a very interesting limud. Amar Kra, loy tischaten bum. Don't marry a bum. Don't marry a goy. Now, Ashkechana. So you see, loy tischaten bum. There's no tefisas kedushin with a bum. I mean, with a goy. Ashkechana l'tafsa b'kedushin. So you have a right that no tefisas kedushin. V'loda kamoy samino. How do you know that the vlad is going to be a goy if someone has a child with a goy? Zok to Gemara the Amar Kra. I want to look at the pasuk inside. It says in the pasuk, "V'loy sischaten bum, bitcha loy sitin levenoi." Don't allow your daughter to marry his son. Ubitoy and his daughter loy sikach levenecha. Don't take as a shnir. Don't take as a wife for your husband. Why not? What is the reason for this pasuk? The Torah explains itself. Ki yaser es bincha me'achara. They're going to turn your son away from you. It says ki yaser. So this can't be referring to your son's female spouse, that she will turn them away from Yiddishkeit, because it says ki yosir es bin chaber. So we're talking about a man, but the man is married to your daughter, hopefully, right? So what do you mean yosir es bin chaber? They say ki yosir es bin chaber. The teretz is it's talking about the son that they'll have together. If you allow your child to be raised in a house where the father's a goy, he's going to turn your child away from Yiddishkeit. And it's your child, it's pincha. So you have a right from here that a child born to a Jewish mother from a goyish father is a yid. So let's go back into the Gemara. Damar Kra, Amar B'Yachim Shem Abshimon Ben Yochid Damar Kra, Ki Yosus Bincha Me'acharai, Bincha Bami Yisrael is Karu Bincha, Ben Bincha Bami Na'ovet is Kachavim Karu Bincha. All of it's called her son. He's called a Shaygitzel. Gewaltig. Huh? That's right. Amar Avina Shmami No. You see from here, Ben Pitcha, the son of your daughter, Habam Na'ovet Kachavim Karu Bincha. That is your son. There was an interesting shaila Rachman Lachton. I mean, these the shailas that come up today. Someone went to Reb Zilberstein. There was a woman who was not dati so much, and they sent to like one of these chenu schools that bring children closer to Yiddishkeit, and she was becoming ungetzimmt with Yiddishkeit. She was becoming frum, but her husband wasn't interested. So she once came to the administration of the school and she said, "I wish I had some way to tzimdon my husband. He should also become more interested in Yiddishkeit." And they said, okay, they'll invite him, they'll do things with him. In the meantime, after talking to him, they realized that he was a goy. So now you have a woman who's married to a goy. Should they help him? Should they carve him? I mean, even Lubavitchers don't go after Gerim, right? So are they supposed to go after this guy or not? So Abzil instead, even though our policy is we're not looking for new customers, we actually discourage people joining. and maybe you should discourage this marriage to break up. Here, because of the svara of Kiyosaris bincha me'acharei, because this child always has his father, so he said vibalt now the child who's your bincha, as our Gemara says, is at stake. We should be mekarev. That's what the Pesach said. Pasuk. Zok the Gemara, Nema kasova Ravina. Let's say the Ravina holds Ovid gachavim ve'eved habal bas Yisrael. If an Ovid gachavim and an eved is bal bas Yisrael, havlad mamzer. You have two choices. Either the vlad is a goy, and if it's a goy, it's not a mamzer. But if it's Jewish, then it's a Jewish child that was fathered by a goy. That should be a mamzer. It's an illicit marriage. It's a non-approved marriage. So that's pushing too far. Need a kosher lahava. It's not a vlad kosher, but mamzer lahava. He's not so vayda. Mamzer pasal mikri. I'll give you that much. That since it's a Jewish child, but it was born from a goyish male, we will call it a pasal child. We'll call it a pasal child. Okay. As Rash the Hiddish minimina, the kosher lahava midashadi lebasa Yisraelis lihiyash noiled bavera mamzer mia loy sishma mina. Don't say it's a mamzer. Kedeminya biavamis. The mamzer me'eshes avav yaldiv ma'eshes av the ein loy aleh Kiddushin aval yesh loy Kiddushin alacheres. When do you say it's a mamzer? That's if this lady is a pas Kiddushin. Except here, there's an iser chorus that doesn't allow a Kiddushin. V'aloksiv shavlad mamzer. Only on such a marriage does it produce a mamzer. The samachle right after it talks about this eshes aviv, it says in the pasuk loyove mamzer b'kalashem. Av kol she'ein la Kiddushin aval yesh la Kiddushin alacheres. Lafugav gechavim the less la Kiddushin klal pasal mikri kishar noilodim ba'avera mechayvelav noyasei, but they're not mamzer. Zok to Gemara. The problem is ahu b'shiva goyim ksiv. We've proven that the mother is the one. If the mother is Jewish, the child is Jewish, and if the mother is not Jewish, the child is not Jewish. But that's only by Shiva Goyim. The pasuk of Kiyoser is bincha me'acharei. That was speaking about the Shiva Amamin. So if it's only speaking about Shiva Amamin, where it says like a schatin bam, maybe dafka by Shire Amamin, do we say the child goes boss of the mother? But maybe by other nations who are not so oduk in avodah zarah, maybe there, even if the mother's a goya and the father's a yid, maybe the child will be a Jewish child. Shar umois v'nolam. Zakmor Omar Chra, ki Yoser es pincha. The Torah didn't just say lois es chatin. The Torah gave a reason for it. Ki Yoser es pincha. That should equally apply to Rabbi's Kolamasir. What's the difference if he's from Shiva Amamin or he's from any other place? It's still going to turn off your son. So therefore, the pasuk, although it is directly speaking to Shiva Amamin, the reason that the Torah gives will equally apply to all nations that are not true. Zog to Gemara, that only works if the fact that the Torah gave a reason is extra, it's redundant. So you say, Vibalt the Torah needlessly gave us a reason, we'll apply that to all other Amamin. And Rab Shimon the Darish time of the crop. Rab Shimon had a policy that anytime the Torah says something without giving a reason for it, we're allowed to fartites the reason for it, and based on the reason that we subscribe to a certain mitzvah, we can actually make chilukim in the mitzvah. Where do you see that? Rashi tells us, it says that you're not allowed to take a mashkin from an almona. Why not? So it just says, don't take, you listen to it. Rabbi Shimon says, Dashin time of the crop. There's a reason for it. Because you're going to have to give it back to her. If it's a nighttime beged, you're going to have to bring it to her every night and then pick it up from her every morning. How is it going to look if every evening and every morning there's a strange man knocking on her door? It's going to bring a bad reputation to her. So that's the reason. So therefore, if she's a wealthy woman, I'm telling you, the pasuk, if she's a wealthy woman, where she says, nah, keep it, I don't need you to bring it back to me every night, I have others. There wouldn't be such a halach. Only Reb Shimon takes the liberty to do that. So therefore, if the Torah goes out of its way to give a reason, it's redundant because we would have ascribed that reason to it anyway. Elul Rabbanon, who holds you not Darshin time of the Krah, and you need the pasuk to say the reason for it, because the pasuk wants to tell you that maybe this only applies to Shiva Amamin, because maybe only Shiva Amamin that are Aduk and Avodah Zarah, they live and breathe Avodah Zarah. That's where there's a problem. But other nations, they're just doing it mitzvahs hanoshim ulumada, as Rashi says. Elul Rabbanon my timer. How do we know that all other women, if it's a goya, the child has the status of a goy? So tomorrow we have another pasuk. By the case of Yefas Tayar, it says after they go through this whole process, only then the achakach tavei alu ve'alt. Mechlal, that you cannot have a Kiddushin, the mikar le'tafsu b'Kiddushin. Before this whole process, it would have been impossible for him to marry her. So you learn from Eshesh Yefas Tayar that a Goya does not have Tfisas Kiddushin. So tomorrow, okay, Ashkan le'tafsu b'Kiddushin, but Vlad the Kamoisim minol. How do you know that the Vlad would be a Goy if he's married to a Goyish woman? On that, Amar Kra, Kisiyena La'ish, the Yol Deloy, which is going back to the case of Ahuva Stua. Because Kisiyena La'ish Yol Deloy. Chalhecha the Karina Bay Kisiyena, whenever we say there's Tavisas Kedushin, like when you marry a Jewish woman, Karina Bay Yol Deloy, then we'll say that the child is Jewish. Chalhecha Deloy Karina Bay Kisiyena, but if Kedushin is not Taifis, like on a Goya, like Karina Bay Yol Deloy, we don't consider those children yours, we consider those children hers, non-Jewish. Frag to Gemara, if that's where you know it from, Ihachi Shivcha Nami. So then I should know Shivcha from the same place. It says Kisiyena Lish V'Yodeloi. We know there's no Tavisas Kedushin by a Shivcha because she's an Amadoy Melechem. So we should know already that the children aren't hers. And we brought a special pasuk right at the top of our Amud, how we know that the child of a Shivcha belongs to a Shivcha. What was the pasuk we brought? The father was an Eved Ivri. The mother was a Shivcha Knainis. After he goes free, the children remain Avodim. So that's how we see that the children go back to the mother by a Shivcha. But why do we need that pasuk for if we know it from here? It says Kisiyena V'Yodeloi. We know already from Amadoy Melechamor that the Shivcha has no Tvisas Kedushin, and we know from Kisiyena Lish V'Yodeloi that the children don't belong there. Don't belong to him, they belong to her. So why don't we need Isha V'Ladeh? Lomali. So by Isha V'Ladeh, Tila Daneh Lomali, we have a whole new limud that we learn out of Isha V'Ladeh. And what is that? What if someone tells the Shivcha who's expecting, I'm freeing you, but your Vlad, I want to keep. You can't split it up. If he frees her, then automatically the Eved that's in her stomach is free as well. As Rashi says, Vlad Mishuchwer. And we're going to soon see, we learn this from our pasuk of Isha V'Ladeh. No, he could split the atom. She's Mishuchweris, and the child remains an Eved. And the pasuk says, and the Gemara gives a reason for the Chachamim. Mishum shenemar ha'isha v'ladeh tia ladeinah. Gemara, how in the world do you see from ha'isha v'ladeh tia ladeinah that he gets to keep her, that he gets to keep the baby? My Talmudah. Zok Gemara, no, this is not ha'isha v'ladeh is not explaining the reason of the Chachamim. The isha v'ladeh is explaining the reason of Rabbi Yosy Aglili. Amrava ad Rabbi Yosy Aglili. So we learn ha'isha v'ladeh tia ladeinah that the isha and the Vlad stay together. So let's Rashi Vlad to come myself, Meshurcher, Kidiyalef Beseifa, like we ended up explaining. Shenemar Isha V'Ladeh Tila Denel. Bisman so Isha Ladenel. If the mother belongs to the Adoin, Havlat Sheteled will be Ladenel. But Ein Isha Ladenel, Ein Vlad Ladenel. What is part of the Chachamim? I don't know. He says you could split it up. They're two different people, and you could split it up.
The question: if someone says to a Eved Yudach Meshurcher, or buys half of the ownership and half of that, does it work?
We had those shilas about it.
It's the same thing. As long as the blood is inside, it's part.
I don't remember those. I don't remember those halachas. We used to get. I should remember it, but I don't. It's a good order. Okay, let's see the Gemara Vayt. We have Tarfin Omer. Maybe we'll be able to finish Perek Omer and we'll start the fourth Perek on Shabbos. We have Tarfin Omer. Yechoylin mamzerim l'taher. There's a way for mamzerim to purge from their children the psul of mamzeris. How would you do that? Mamzer shenasa shivcha. If a mamzer married a shivcha, is a mamzer allowed to marry a shivcha? Is a Jewish man allowed to marry a goita? The answer is no. So a Jewish person, it's like a kadesh, right? But what could he do? Mamzer shenasa shivcha. If a mamzer marries a shivcha, the halacha is avlad evet. His child will not be his child. The child will be an Eved. Like we just said, right? or you learn it from Kisian Lish, right? It's only the old Eloy. So there's not a old Eloy. So therefore, Shechiroi, once he frees David, Nimtza ben Chayr, and he's not a mamzer because he doesn't follow the yichus of his father, he follows the yichus of his mother. Beautiful, simple way to get out of it. Rabbi Lezer, no, doesn't work. The psul sticks with him. Hareza Ebed mamzer. He's going to have all the alamalas that they should have. Ibailu. So the Gemara clears the shine. Rab Tarvin and Chatchila Kama. Was Rab Tarvin actually saying that you're going to tell a man who's a mamzer to violate the Torah where it says Aliyah Kadesh just to purge mamzeris? Or do you have it come? Are you saying no? I can't advise you to do it, but had you done it, it would have been mitar your children. Zoktamar Toshma. Amalei Rab Tarfon. They told Rab Tarfon, Tiharta is a scharim, Tiharta is an akevus. You found a way to fix the scharim. Why? Because if someone's a mamzer, he can travel. Here, he can't marry. Can you imagine? Everybody knows him here, and he's going to marry a shivcha. It doesn't look right. But what he can do is he can pick him up. He can pick himself up, move to a city far away where nobody knows him, and he'll play like he's an Ebed. I'm like believing he's an Ebed, and he'll marry a shivcha. And then he can get up. But a woman, it's not there for her to wander around like that. Ain't there chishus of Rashi, liglois mimekoima, to go to Golos from her home place, ulavakish tachpulois, linose b'seiser, me'achar sheyesh moichin biyada. Right? The reason why she'd have to do it quietly because people won't let a Jewish woman marry an Eved. So it must be Alma Rab Tarfon, the Eved Kamar. It must be that Rab Tarfon only did it the Eved. Dilich at Chila, even the Moichin biyada, mamzeres nami tinasiv leved. If Rab Tarfon was saying Lechatchila you're allowed to do it, so why do we have to go far away? And that's why it excludes a woman from such an opportunity. If it's Lechatchila, then she's allowed to do it Lechatchila. If you're Lechatchila Kamar, mamzeres nami tinsav la'avda. Zok to Gemara, maybe not. Maybe it's Lechatchila, but Eved ein lo yichayis. Even if she tried doing this, it wouldn't work because an Eved has no yichus at all. Therefore, if she did it, it would still get a psul of mamzeris from her. Tashma, there was someone in the neighborhood who Rab Samloi was familiar with. Mamzer Abba, he was a mamzer. He told him, "Oh, what a shame you got married already. Had I got a hold of you before you got married, tartinu livnach, I would have been able to advise you how to purge the psul of mamzeris from your child." As Rashi says, had I known you before you married, I would have given you an eitzah. That means he was going to lechatchila advise him what to do. If you're going to say that Rab Tarfon's halach is lechatchila, we're allowing this mamzer to marry a shivcha. He would have given him that eitzah. A little bit with the Eved, if you're not allowed to do it, it's just that the Eved, my kneel. I don't understand. The Vincent La Eitzah, he'll give him a Eitzah to do an Aveira. No, I'm sorry, my kneel. The expression my kneel, my have Amalei. Isura, La Haya Mitzvah Eitzel. He wouldn't have told him to do an Aveira. Zakima, you're right. He wouldn't have told him to do an Aveira and to marry a Shifra illegally. But you know what he would have told him? The Mitzvah La Eitzah, Vamalei Sil Gnoif, go steal. And when they come to get you to pay back, say, I don't have the money, and then they'll sell you as an Eved Ivri. Viz davim bet Eved Ivri. So Rashi Mashali, the mitzvah the eitzah that he would have given him, Rab Shmuel would have given his friend, was Amle Zil Gnoiv, with his davim Eved Ivri, and then you say Shivcha Muteres Lach, and then you'd be allowed to marry a Shivcha, the Machru Bezdin, Rabbi Moshe Lo Shivcha Knainis. But for Lo Moicha Atzmai, but he wouldn't. But if you sell yourself, and Rabbi Moshe Lo Shivcha Knainis. That's why he told him to. That's why he told him to steal. I don't understand this because isn't there a rule that unless you're married, ain't Rabbi Moshe Lo Shivcha Knainis? So for Keret, now that he's married, he can give him such an eitzah. Before he was married, he wouldn't be able to give him such an eitzah, right? I think that we learned this halacha according to at least some Tanoim that unless you're married already, then you cannot give him a shivcha.
But his solution to not violating a law is to violate a law.
Oh, Frek Rashi, Victor's Kasset. But who dinami mi sharilin suvi eitzel mikna? What's the difference? You're counseling him to do an avera. Ela mikusha acheres salke. Anyway, we're going to slug up this whole mahalach. They have a makshale. If we asked that kasha of how you could allow him to steal, have a matila l'shnuye, he could have answered it. He could have answered that you can't do that anyway. So he could have slugged up with that. He could have answered that he told him just to sell yourself as a Nevid Ivri. If the Gemara would have asked, how could you counsel him to do a variant steal? He would have answered, okay, he just told him to sell himself, and it goes according to the Tana Rebbe Eliezer, who holds that even if someone sells himself, he's not Mechur Bezdin, he's still allowed to marry a Shivcha Knais. Okay, Zog the Gemara, Frek the Gemara, Ubishani, the Rab Samloi. In the years of Rab Samloi, Eved Ivri Mihava, were there Eved Ivris? Were there Eved Ivris in those days that he was able to give him such an Eitzah? So it's impossible. So the Eitzah had to be, just go marry a Shivcha, which means he's counseling him lechatchila to do an aver and marry a Shivcha. Elav Shmamina, Rab Tarfon lechatchila kamar Shmamina. It must be that Rab Tarfon says lechatchila, if someone's a mamzer, they're allowed to marry a Shivcha, be over an aver in order to be mitar der zera. And that's how we pass. Gewaltig. Rabbi Eliezer Omer Hareza Eved Mamzer. Here, Rabbi Eliezer Omer Hareza Eved Mamzer. You don't. All you did was you made it worse for yourself. Now you're an Eved and you're a Mamzer. Rabbi Eliezer, my time with the Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer the Omer asked, what is the reason for Rabbi Eliezer that the child of this Shivcha also retains the Mamzeris of his father? The Omer Kra Loi Halach Achar Psuloi. What does the pasuk say by Loi? Zakrashi Lo Yovei Mamzer B'Kal Hashem Gam Dor Asiri Lo Yovei Loi B'Kal Hashem. What's that extra Loi? The extra Loi is to tell you that it sticks. Loi Halach Achar Psuloi. For Rabbanon, who hold that it does work, Ahu Yisrael Shenosa Mamzeres Salkadaita. That's talking about a Yisrael who married a Mamzeres. There, the child is a Mamzer. Salkadaita Chamina. I would have thought that the Psul Mamzeres only follows the father, of Saloi Afke, that it even follows the mother. It says Suis Reish, so you would think that even Mamzeres only follows the father, Kamash Malon, that it even follows the mother. Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Eliezer says it follows the mother and follows both ways. Lav, Afal Gav, the cause of the Mishpachosim, Leveis Avoisam. It does say the Mishpachosim, Leveis Avoisam. True, but also Loi Afke. Lloyd says no. The psul carries on no matter what. Nevertheless, also Loi Afke, even though we normally say that the yichus follows the mother, and therefore the child shouldn't get the psul of mamzeres of his father, but the Loi will put that psul mamzeres back on. For Abanon, kovlad b'mei shivcha knainis is kavlad b'mei behemadon. So it's no shaykhis whatsoever to the father, and therefore even the Loi won't apply the psul mamzeres to that child. However, it will apply it to a case of a mamzer. I'm sorry, to a Yisrael who marries a mamzeres. Okay, Zok to Gemara weiter. Baruch Hashem, we were zeicher to finish the third parak. Hadin Allah Chaimer, Hadin Allah Chaimer, Hadin Allah Chaimer. We still have in Be'ez Hashem. I'm sorry. Okay, so now we have still 2 minutes, so let's at least start Asar Yuchsin.
I want to tell you a good word.
Okay, so let me just finish the Mishnah. Asar Yuchsin, Olumi Bovel. 10 categories, 10 shades of levels of Karsher Yichis came up from Bovel. When did they come up from Bovel? Zogt Rashi, Kisha'olu B'nei HaGoyla. After Churban, Bayis Rishon, after the 70 years of Golus, when they came back to build the second base of Mikdash, they were already 10 shades of levels of Yichis. Uve Gemara Mefarishla, Dashmina, we learn from here, Shemishpacha Shebevavel Miyuchasasei. The Mishpachas in Bavel, they had good Yichus, they knew where they were holding. They kept track of things. Shehifrish Ezra, Kolap Psulim Isham, Vaylichanimai. Because Ezra separated the Psulim and took them with him to make sure to keep the core of Klal Yisrael pure. So let's see what that was. Asar Yuchsin, Olam Bavel, Kahani was the highest level of Yichus, Levi, Yisraeli. Then there's Chalali, they're apostle, but they're not as bad as the rest. There's Kiddushin Toivos by them. There's Gerim. There's Charurim, which are Avodim that were freed. Mamzerim. Then there's Nisini, which are members of the Shiva Amim that got into Klal Yisrael. There are Shetukis. Shtuki, I think the Gemara is going to explain what it means. What it means is when we ask, is that his father? They say, no, that's not his father. It's don't ask. Or Vasuvi is someone you don't know anything about him. You don't even know the child's mother. So those are the 10 levels. So Kahanim will be Misraelim, Chalalim, Gerim, Charurim, Mamzerim, Nesinim, Shtuki, Yasufi. Beautiful. Zok the Gemara. Kahanim will be Israelim, the term love is episode. The first 3 categories are all allowed to marry each other. Levi Yisraeli, Chaloli, Geri v'Charuri, Mutarim love is episode. A Levi is allowed to marry a Ger and an Eved HaMashucher, and the Israelis as well, but the Kohen cannot. Geri v'Charuri, Mamzeri u'Nesini, Shtuki v'Asufi, Kula Mutarim love is episode. A Ger could even marry a Mamzer or a Shtuki or a Sufi, can marry anybody else. Ve'elam Shtuki, what is a Shtuki? Kol Shu Makar Esimoy. We know who his mother is. Ve'eni Makar Esava. We don't know his father. So when the child says Tati, the mother says, shh, it's not his father, it's not his father. Right? So that's why it's called a Shtuki, because he tells him to be quiet when she says Tati. Atsuvi means Kol Shenesav in a Shuk. He's an abandoned child found in the Shuk. Ve'eni Makar Lo Yasava V'Lo Yasimoy. And Abashol HaYikar L'Shtuki B'Duki. Abashol will refer to a Shtuki as a B'Duki. And the Gemara, the Gemara will explain why. So we'll stop now. And Bez Hashem will be Namshach tomorrow. Bez Hashem Yisbarach on Shabbos. I believe Mincha tomorrow is at 6 o'clock. So we're going to learn at 5 o'clock. But Finkel Shir, who's very behind, I'm going to start with them at 4:30 and try to catch them up from 5 blood.
Why do we let the Beduki, the rest of Punish for Seder? The Stiki, weiß die Mama Gott, mit wem so der mir. Das wird erst after we shake hands, we say look, mit der Mama.
We'll have to see in the Gemara what it means. I don't know the